Hello. In this video we will look at how to create a simple gradebook. This will be helpful for those face-to-face instructors who need to create a gradebook from scratch. In the online and hybrid classes, anytime you create an item, a test, discussion board, or assignment, a column is automatically created in the gradebook for you. However, in the face-to-face classes where there are no assignments or tests, we must create the gradebook from scratch. Anything that you will grade the students on will need to have a column created in the gradebook. Okay, let's get started. If you hover over to the left on the control panel, you will see the tab for Grade Center. If you click that and expand it, you'll see the full Grade Center. As we see here, there are no columns set up, just a weighted total and a total, which come by default. So like I said before, we need to create a column for every item the students will receive a grade on. If you have 5 tests, you'll need 5 separate columns. If you have a weekly lab, 16 weeks, you'll need 16 lab columns, and so on and so forth. To begin the process, you click on Create Column. And you simply give your column a name. We'll say test number 1. Scroll down, give it a points possible, 100. Keeping it simple. And you hit submit. Here you see you have a test 1 column. I can click into this and assign a grade now. So let's continue creating more columns. Again, click on Create Column, and we'll say this is Test 2. Points possible, and submit. Creating a column is that easy. Now we see we have a Test 1 and a Test 2. So now I'm going to create some additional columns. Maybe I do have labs, so we go back to Create Column. Lab 1. Points possible 100. Submit. And I'm going to create a lab 2 now. So we see I have test 1 and test 2, lab 1 and lab 2. I know that my class also has maybe a couple of essays or papers. So I go back to Create Column. Paper 1. Again, points possible. And submit. So we see I have test 1 and 2, lab 1 and 2, paper 1 and 2. I'm keeping this simple, but I realize most gradebooks will be longer than this. Like I said, maybe you have 16 labs, 5 tests, etc. You would just create a column for each one. So let's say I'm at the end of my gradebook and I have a final. So again, I always go to Create Column. And we're just going to give it a column name and the points possible. If we scroll over to the right a little bit, there's that final column. Once your columns are created, now you have to make a decision. Does your class run on a weighted total or just a running total? The running total is everything counts the same, there's no weights. The weighted total, meaning you're using a percentage weight. For example, your tests are worth 20%, your labs are worth 40%, assignments are worth 10%, so on and so forth. So if you're just using a basic running total, after you create those columns, you're done. However, if you are using a weighted total of percentages, there are a couple of additional steps. The next step for a weighted total is to manage and create categories. Categories are grouping like things together. For example, all your tests will be a test category, and then you give that category a percentage. Your labs will be a category, and they get a percentage, and so on and so forth. Now let's take a look at those categories first. If you hover over Manage, you'll see a pop-up window, and you go down to Categories. These are the categories that are built into Blackboard. Very generic titles: test, journal, discussion, assignment, so on. If you need a more specific category like lab, clinical, paper, you can click on the Create Category button to create that. So I'm going to create one for lab. Just give it a name and submit. I see I have the lab category here, and you might see there's a checkbox beside it, meaning that's a created category that you can delete if needed. The other built-in categories you cannot delete. Click OK when you're done, and you're taken back to the full Grade Center. So our categories have been created. We've previously created our columns as well. Now we need to assign those categories to the columns. So again, we click on the Manage button and go to Column Organization. Column Organization is a page that gives you a full view of your Grade Center. It shows the name of the columns, if a category has been assigned, and the points possible. This is a good page to troubleshoot your gradebook if you notice some problems, because it gives you a full view of it. So we see that these columns have no category. However, we need to assign a category to continue building our weighted total. So if I click on Test 1 and 2, we know they're going to be grouped together as a test category. I come down here and click Change Category to Test. And then I see over here that category has changed from no category to test. I just need to do the rest of these. Lab 1 and 2, change category to Lab. Paper 1 and 2, change category to Assignment. The final column is a single column that's not going to be grouped together, because the final is going to have its own percentage. And that's fine. If you have one column that's not grouped together with others, you can still assign a weight to it. So we're just going to leave that alone under no category. When you're done, click Submit. So our final step to building the weighted total is look at your weighted total column here, click the drop down arrow, and click Edit Column Information. You can change the column name if you like, from weighted total to grade, final grade, whatever. Scroll down and change your primary display to percentage and the secondary display to CFCC standard. That will display a letter grade to you, not to the students, but it can be a quick visual reference to see how many A's, B's, and C's, etc. you have in the course. Scroll down a little further, and we now see we have columns and categories to select to build our total weight, currently at 0%. So if I hover over the lab category, I see lab 1 and 2 as attached to it. I click the bottom arrow going with the bottom box to bring it over. Now it asks what's the percentage for this lab, and we'll say 40%. Again, I hover over test category, get the arrow to bring it over, and it asks for a percentage. We'll say 20%. As we see, my total weight is calculating as I add more percentages. My assignment category, paper 1 and 2, bring it over, and we'll say 10%. My total weight is currently 70%. Now remember, I have my final column that I want to weight. So you come over up here to columns to select and locate that final column, and use the top arrow for this top box to bring it over. And I put my final 30% in. Now see, I have a total weight of 100%. Once that's complete, just hit submit. So I've created my weighted total. One thing to keep in mind, this green check mark is the external grade. That is the grade you will display to students when they click on the My Grades link. If you have switched to a weighted total, you need to set the weighted total to display as the external grade. You can do that by clicking the drop down arrow and selecting Set as External Grade. We see the green check mark has now switched to the weighted total, and that will be displayed to the students. It is very important to select the correct total to display to students, because the weighted total and a running total may show different grades. So, your gradebook is set up, the semester has begun, and you're now putting grades in. It's as simple as clicking into the cell for the grade, type in your number, and hit enter. Maybe I have a couple of lab grades to put in. Type in the grade, hit enter. As we see, the weighted total and the total are giving different grades. So like I said before, it's very important to make sure you're showing the correct grade column to your students. So again, throughout the semester, you're just typing your grades in, number, enter. And Blackboard will recalculate the grades in real time. Okay, so this was a quick tutorial on how to create a basic gradebook. If you have any questions, feel free to contact Online Learning. We can set up a personal one-on-one workshop if needed. And thank you for watching.